Thank you. How are you? Well, that's a simple question, isn't it? The interesting thing is only about 30% of us answer it honestly. It's not that we're bad people. This is common in our culture. We've been programmed to give positive or neutral answers when asked how we are. As an expressive kid, I was ridiculed strongly for showing my emotions, especially when I was afraid, and especially at home, although in my dysfunctional family, a little fear was appropriate. But my fear was scorned as a weakness, and so was my passion and my excitement. And this is common in a society where we misunderstand emotions. I learned not to tell the truth about them. But now I have some tools to work with them. I've spent a lifetime studying feelings and emotional intelligence. I started as an actor because I just wanted to show people that it was okay to have feelings. Then, through several therapies, some workshops, a lot of study, and a couple of certifications in emotional intelligence assessments have helped. I teach it now, but it's a lifetime learning. Choosing acting was exciting, but in spite of my determination, I found that I really struggled with truly showing emotions. The conditioning by my family and society had jammed me up. If 70% of us don't feel comfortable admitting challenge, sadness, anger, grief, just being human, to answer the question honestly, how are you? That's a social disease. Although we're ultimately responsible for expressing ourselves authentically, it's not truly our fault that we're reluctant to do so. Early in the 20th century, American Stoicism was pumped up into an obsession with positivity and productivity. The problem is that became a cultural syndrome now called toxic positivity. That's the demand that we only express positive, upbeat emotions. If we don't, we're losers. This is one of the most damaging social taboos that we have. It separates us from ourselves and from others. It leaves us relating to each other like Barbie and Ken, persona to persona, or like Pinocchio, lying, and like them, wanting to be real people. We need self-awareness and self-empathy to become real people. Both of those require that we experience sensations, feelings, and emotions that our body-mind sends us with appreciation and trust. That's practical to do because they guide our physical well-being, and they can inspire us to be better people. Early in my 20s, I was doing summer stock, and I couldn't remember why I'd chosen acting as a profession. I was feeling bitter and disappointed one day, and I was kind of hiding out in the lobby of the theater when this mother and her friend came sprinting through, yelling, "If you don't stop crying, we're leaving you here," and they dashed out the door, leaving behind an hysterically crying little girl who dropped to the floor in a puddle of misery. I suddenly remembered that my family had yelled at me that way, and my heart broke open. I wanted to help her. So I approached her gently, and I asked, "Can I help you?" And she looked up at me and said, "I've got something in my eye and it really hurts." And I said, "I want you to cry as hard as you can. And she gave me a funny look and then just let loose with a crying. In a couple of seconds, the tiny gnat that had flown into her eye washed down her face, and she stopped crying. I had let this little girl experience that crying could be a good thing, and remembered that I had a heart. So in 1990, the California State Department of Education produced a study that described why human beings are not only inherently equal, they're also inherently worthy. And that supported our founding fathers' declaration that all human beings are created equal. The study concluded that the absence of this feeling, this belief that we are all inherently worthy, was the cause of the social strife that divides us. You know, people drop out or act out when they don't experience the human dignity of their worthiness just as they are. Effective human socialization requires that we make emotional choices that support a functional, healthy society. But how is that possible when our social beliefs cut us off from the core of our human perception, feelings? We need to rebel against the social, emotional, and judgments that separate us from ourselves. Emotions can't be trusted. Emotions don't belong in the workplace. Boys don't cry. Girls should be sweet. We're constantly told that we have to control, manage, or regulate our feelings. Doesn't that sound industrial, mechanical, inhuman? The shaming of feelings teaches us that we should suffer for having emotions. A famous mindfulness teacher calls that second suffering. We don't just experience pain, we beat ourselves up for it. Neuroscientist Antonio Damasio tells us that feelings are bodily sensations. They're a vital part of consciousness itself. If we don't deny them, we can experience them more precisely and learn from what they're trying to tell us. He also tells us that their purpose is to help us live well. They don't just give us important information. They motivate our actions. You have an itch, you scratch it. Feelings are how we experience our lives. We can reclaim our worthiness by embracing our emotions. Only through self-empathy, honoring our feelings, can we break the spell of unworthiness. The nagging temptation to believe that we are fundamentally flawed for feeling tired, sad, angry, or scared. Owning and experiencing all of our emotions will give us the agency to overcome outdated social beliefs and reach out to each other with empathy. My exploration of emotions intensified 5 years ago when I was diagnosed with cancer. Anybody who's survived cancer can tell you that my life was permanently changed. My energy, my perspectives, my values. But I've experienced even more of a commitment to emotional honesty and to the power of listening to sensations, feelings, and emotions. I made a pact with myself that I would work with whatever came up for me: loss, fear, confusion, exhaustion, everything, as a part of my recovery. I refused to second suffer. This required just a really strong perspective of self-empathy for everything that I experienced. I hadn't tried that before. I valued fear because it made me trust. I valued pain because it indicated that I was healing. And I valued exhaustion as the need to rest. I was honest about how I felt, and I took action on the information. We're citizens in a world of constant challenge and change, and that's not going to stop. One of the small commitments that we can make is to practice self-empathy by courageously acknowledging our feelings, to truthfully answer the question, how are you? And own the dignity of our emotions. Give this experience of basic worthiness to yourself and others. It promotes trust. Think of it as a civic responsibility. How are you?